Alright folks, it's Andy here from Rusty and the Woodsman, and thanks for joining me on another one. So today's video is going to be about the Nessmuk 125 knife. It was sent to me a couple months ago now by a company called Brisa, based out in Finland. Just to use on my channel, doing the normal day-to-day camp type chores that I would use a knife for when I come out to the woods. And I said after a couple months of using it I'd film a review, just talking about how I got on with it, the pros and cons, etc, etc. So here we are. So yeah, the company Brisa, they're based out in Finland, and they're a knife supply company, so you can get from them, you know, the various steels and handle materials and all the other bits and pieces that go along with knife making from them. But they also have their own little department where they design and make knives, and you'll probably have heard of it. It's called Enzo, so like the Enzo Trapper knife. I've used them for a few years, I really like them. But the guy Dennis, I was speaking to him through email and that, and he was telling me that soon they're going to be changing things up a bit. So rather than have their own little department called Enzo, it's basically all just going to come under Brisa. So I'm assuming in the future, rather than having the Enzo Trapper 9.5 knife, it'll probably be something along the lines of the Brisa Trapper 9.5 knives. So I thought we'd talk about the specs quickly. So the length of the blade is 125mm, and then you've got the blade width. It starts off narrow down here at about 26mm, and then thickening up towards the tip at about 35mm. The blade thickness is 3.5mm, and the total length of the knife is 235mm. And then the steel is a carbon steel 80 CRV2, and it's got a high Scandi grind. The handle material is curly birch with the brass Corby bolts, and also has red liners. So it comes with this brown leather sheath, and the leather is about 3mm thick. It's riveted here and then stitched down the length of it, and there's also a little eyelet there, so you can put a little lanyard on it and you can tie it around your leg to stop it flapping about. You've got your standard belt loop, which is riveted on here and then it's sewn on here. And you've also got your belt dangler as well, brass hardware, and then it's riveted on too. This little piece of green paracord, I've just got that on there because I've made my own homemade removable belt dangler, and I'm just testing it out, and at the minute I'm touching it on with a piece of green paracord. So with their Nessmuk design, they've prioritised, you know, slicing and cutting activities over, say, something like chopping, hence the high sort of Scandi grind on it. They recommend on their website that if you wanted to use it for chopping, that you should put a secondary bevel on it, just to help prevent any rolling and chips and whatnot. But you know, it does have that sort of chopper look to it. It's like a sort of mini Golok machete type thing, but if I'm totally honest with you, there's really no weight in it. I don't know how well of a chopper it would be, and also from the safety aspect, there's no lanyard in the handle, so you couldn't put a piece of paracord through it or a lanyard to put your hand through it, so when you are chopping, to prevent it slipping out your hand. So yeah, I haven't used it as a chopper. I've just used it as a cutting and slicing type knife, as it says on the website. But yeah, like it says, they do recommend if you are going to use it for chopping to put a secondary bevel on the grind, because it could roll or chip out on you. So from what I've read, the original Nessmuk knife was designed more with food prep in mind, so butchering game, gutting fish, that type of stuff. If you had any sort of delicate carving work, you would use a small folding knife, and if you had any sort of heavy woodwork to do, you would use a double-headed axe. So I stayed away from the chopping type activities and focused on food prep, wood prep and carving. So as I said, food prep was one of the activities I used the knife for, and yeah, with the high grind it was really an easy ask for the knife. Chopping various veg and meat, etc, etc, had no problem there. Feather sticking, the high grind, like I said, it does eat through wood, so with the feather sticking, and one way it is no problem, but with the angle of the grind it does take a bit of getting used to, but after some practice it'll feather wood nicely. So when it came to wood prep for the fire, I used the Nessmuk for battening. It did alright. The high angle of the grind, it does cause the knife to bind in the wood the same way a flat grind does, but yeah, it will do the job. I used the Nessmuk for a couple of carving tasks, and the first one was a bow drill set. I carved a bow drill set from scratch, had a successful end of it. Yeah, as previously said, the knife just eats wood, so carving the various components, the hearthboard, the spindle, etc., it was just made really easy. And then also from start to finish I used it to carve a spoon from a piece of willow. I mean, it was a long process because I would usually, you know, use an axe to remove the worst of the material. But again, the Nessmuk prevailed. Through the whole process I had no hot spots from the continuous use. The only issue I did find with using the Nessmuk was when it come to carving the bowl of the spoon. To be honest, it could be more down to my experience level, because I've never actually used a knife to carve the bowl of a spoon before. I've always just turned to my hook knife for that part of the process. So, but I did find it quite awkward to try and use the Nessmuk knife to do that. But yeah, like I said, it could be either way. It could be the Nessmuk knife, or it could just be the fact that I've never used a knife to carve the bowl of a spoon before, so it's maybe something I need to practice rather than holding it against the Nessmuk. I took it on my latest overnighter and used it as my, you know, my main camp knife, and I used it from everything from wood prep to carving tent stakes, battening wood, you know, all the usual camp chores you'd use a knife for, and yeah, it didn't disappoint. So the only thing I haven't used the Nessmuk knife for yet is scraping birch bark and then using it to strike a ferro rod. Yeah, in the 2 months I've been using the Nessmuk knife for, I've really enjoyed it. It's a peculiar shape, but there's a lot of history behind it, you know, a lot of experience in the design of it. So for, like, you know, all the bushcraft tasks and camp chores I've been using it for, it's performed fine. You know, there's not a great deal of issues and flaws I find with it. You know, they've either been minor or temporary problems, like, you know, feather sticking. You know, with that, you know, that high grind, it's going to take you a bit of time getting used to use it for feather sticking, but you know, once you've got it, you know, it just eats wood, so it'll do it really nicely for you. You get some really fine curls out of it. A minor problem is probably the binding in the wood, using it for battening. I know a lot of people don't agree with using a knife for battening, but I think it's probably 50-50 tone on who's right and who's wrong with it. But you know, it will do it. It just binds up a bit. Then there's you know, the chopping. You know, so if you're looking into buying a knife with, you know, the idea in mind you want to use it for chopping tasks as well, to be honest, I feel this is probably just not the best knife for it. I mean, not only because of the grind, it's a bit more delicate, so you'd have to, as Brisa's website suggests, you'd have to, you know, grind on a secondary bevel to prevent it from rolling or chipping. But it's just the fact that there's not much weight behind it. And also on the handle there's no lanyard hole, so you couldn't put a lanyard through it to put your hand in the lanyard to prevent it slipping, so you know, there's a safety aspect there as well with it. But yeah, really that would be my only cons for the knife, if you like. Talking about pricing wise, Brisa's own website, they sell it for €99. In the UK there's a website called Knives and Tools UK, and they're selling it for £80, which includes postage and packaging. So, I hope you enjoyed the videos, folks. If you found it useful, if you can give it a thumbs up and a share, I'd really appreciate that. And as always, I'm thankful for you taking the time today to watch, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.